All right, we're going to first start with the trapezoid, or the parallelogram rather, not the trapezoid. Those things are a little bit different. Now, I understand that I do have a stencil to use, but what you want to do is you want to draw a parallelogram. And with that parallelogram, as long as, opposite sides are parallel to each other, and then you draw it and it looks right, and if you want to as well, draw in the diagonals, because they're going to give us this situation. And so you have parallelogram A, B, C, D, and E is the midpoint of segment AC and segment BD. So we have this picture for the parallelogram, which is what we found when we worked on one of the parallelograms, which was one of the 6 shapes. Now, when you open this up, this one's kind of tough because it's on the spine. So we're going to have special characteristics. And these are the things that make the parallelogram a parallelogram. So 1, opposite sides are parallel. And opposite sides are congruent. Is it okay if I use OPP for opposite? You can write the entire word if you want to. So opposite sides are parallel and opposite sides are congruent. Which means, if we go back to the original shape, which I'll go back to afterwards, we're going to put in all this information onto the picture so we can see all the stuff into the picture. And like I said, you just make the best picture that you can make for right now. I know it's not going to be drawn to scale, but you want to make it where opposite sides look parallel. Opposite sides are going to be congruent as well. Now, 3, opposite angles. Are congruent. And opposite angles are supplementary. Okay. I know, I went back. I was just making sure. So opposite sides parallel, opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, because angles can't be parallel, that would be silly. Adjacent angles, any 2 angles right next door to each other, are supplementary. Now what does it mean to be supplementary? Add up to 180. The sum, I'll put the sum as sigma, remember that, is equal to 180. So 180 degrees, not 180, 180 degrees. diagonals share the same midpoint, sorry that my handwriting's really bad. So diagonals share the same midpoint, so they both have the same midpoint. And I guess 6, or you could call it 5a, the diagonals bisect each other. Which means they cut each other in half. Alright, so those are the characteristics. Now put special characteristics there. I'm not going to do that for any other one. I did that for the first one just so we know that that's what we're doing. And I'm giving you all this information so we can go back and we can start, and you can look at, and I know you did this on Friday. I wanted you to look up stuff and figure out all the different characteristics and all that. But what we're going to do is we're going to make this list so everybody has this. And you can always go back to it. Because if I say, what is this figure? And you think it's a parallelogram, well, it better have these 6 parts to it. Alright, so, are we good with these 6 parts? Alright, now, if we go back to this picture, that side is congruent to that side. Those are opposite sides. AB is congruent to DC. These 2 sides are congruent. This side is parallel to this side. AB is parallel to segment CD. AD, which we'll put 2 arrows, is parallel to this one. And I'll just do this. 3 there, 3 there, 4 there, and 4 there. And I can't really do too much about the angles. Now, there's a lot going on here. But if you just look at, all right, AB has 1 congruency mark. I have to look for a segment that has 1. The only one that has that is CD. Okay. This one has 4. That's point E. E is the midpoint of both of those. Now, it doesn't mean that these 2 sides, or these 2 segments, ED and EB, are the same as AE and EC. That's not the case at all. But what it means is that point cuts both of these in half. So at least if that's a 5, that's a 5. If that's a 6, that's a 6. You know that going in. And we're going to explore more with that. Any questions on the parallelogram? Trust me, it's going to go quicker. Now, let's move over to the rectangle. Keep up. Instead of talking, keep up. All right, we're going to move down to rectangle. Don't say that in here, please. It's not your place to say that, it's my place. You know, in professional sports, who gets in trouble? The person who starts it or the person who comes in afterwards? The person who comes in afterwards. The retaliator, not the instigator. Alright, so in this one I'm going to do the same thing. A, B, C, D, and E And I'll say E is the midpoint of segment AC and DB. Same thing. And now I have my special characteristics. The nice thing is, since the rectangle is a direct descendant of the parallelogram, I can say this. Are we okay with this picture to start with? Okay, I'll give you a second or two. Like I said, make it the best you can. Just make it the best that you can. The picture is almost identical to the parallelogram, except for it's a rectangle instead of a parallelogram. Good? And also, if you're kind of falling behind with this, with the pictures, I am making a video of it. You can go online and actually do this on my YouTube channel. I'll have links up on the webpage, and I'll send them out on Remind 101. Now, here's the characteristics. So we're going to go back up here. I'm going to start here. 1. And this is what makes it nice and easy. The first thing I'm going to say is it has all the parallelogram characteristics because, technically speaking, a rectangle is a parallelogram. And even up here, you can say that all rectangles are parallelograms. All rectangles are parallelograms, but not all parallelograms are rectangles. So, basically that means that if it's a rectangle, it's a parallelogram. Instantly, it's a parallelogram. But if it's a parallelogram, you can't say it's a rectangle unless it fits all the rectangle stuff. And there's only a couple extra that we have to use, that we have to put down for this. Let me zoom it out a little bit so we have that. All right. One of the characteristics, all angles are right angles. And diagonals are congruent. Believe it or not, that is it. That's the only thing. As soon as all angles are right angles and the diagonals are congruent, and it has everything else that a parallelogram has, those are the only two special extra things that a parallelogram has. And we're done with rectangles. That's it. See, it's not that bad. It gets faster as we move on. So any questions on those? Yeah. Now, you got to keep looking at them and looking at them through that idea. All right, we're going to move on to rhombuses. All right. No, that's not a kite. I'll show you what a kite is soon. Alright, here's a rhombus. Andrew, turn around. Strike two. Here's a rhombus. All four sides are congruent. Diagonals are perpendicular. But again, opposite sides are parallel. So that side is parallel to that side. This side, we'll put 2 marks, is parallel to this side. Now I won't even put the letters on there because it doesn't matter. Yes, ma'am. That's fine. Doesn't matter if it's diagonal, sideways, up, down, left, right. It doesn't matter. As long as you draw something that looks like this, where the 4 sides are... Yep. Now, the best way to draw this is to actually draw your diagonals, where you have this diagonal, you figure out the middle, then you draw a diagonal, or the other diagonal that's perpendicular to it, and make sure that those 2 sides are equal, those 2 sides are equal, then those sides are going to always be equal. That's the easiest thing to do. Yep. Opposite sides. Yeah, opposite sides. That's an adjacent side because it's right next door. That's an adjacent side because it's connected. That's your opposite side. Almost. Almost. Now, here are the characteristics. All of the parallelogram characteristics and the main difference is 1, all sides are congruent, and 3, diagonals are perpendicular. That's a congruency sign. All sides are congruent. So, you see, there's only 2 other things different than a parallelogram. All the sides have to be congruent, and the diagonals have to be perpendicular. Can I move back to the picture? Anyone need this up any longer? Alright, so there's your picture. And now, guess what figure we're going to? Alright, stop talking. Because you're just talking gibberish at this point. Square. So if I draw the square, and then I draw... I'll move this up in a second. Yep. There's your square. Just like the rhombus. Now here's the cool thing about the square. The square has opposite sides congruent, diagonals are equal, diagonals are perpendicular, all sides are equal. No. Alright, a square has all the characteristics of a parallelogram, rectangle, and rhombus. So a square has all the characteristics of a parallelogram, rectangle, and rhombus. That's it. Oh, one other thing. This is the regular quadrilateral. So this is the regular quadrilateral. All sides and angles are congruent. That's what regular means. Oop. It's so important that it doesn't even fit inside. I always say if a rhombus and a rectangle get married, they'd have a square. Because it has everything that those do. Yep. Is there a kite on here? Alright. We only got 10 minutes to get 3 more done, so I need your undivided attention. If we get this all done, there's no homework. If we don't get it done, there's homework. Alright. Now, I'll be honest, there's not a lot of characteristics for the next shapes, but drawing these shapes are going to be a little bit more challenging. A kite is kind of like a distant cousin of all of the parallelogram family. But it's not necessarily true. Now a kite, the easiest way to draw it